so we have our 3 tools, or 4 tools, I guess, if we count the paper, pencil with the eraser, a ruler, and this is a T-square. Now, your T-square, I have made your T-squares for you. You can buy a T-square, you can make your own T-square. I've made these out of 2 very straight pieces of flexible plastic. And one side, there's a little ridge, and the other side is perfectly flat. The little ridge should be on the table so that it catches your paper. See how it's caught my paper? Okay. Very first thing we're going to do to make a 1-point perspective drawing, we are going to draw our horizon line. This is where the ground and the sky meet. Then you're going to, our papers are 12 inches, so we need right in the middle, which would be the 6-inch mark, which is called a vanishing point. This is called a vanishing point, okay? VP, vanishing point. So this is our vanishing point, and the reason we call it our vanishing point is because this is the point off into the distance in which everything looks like it sort of vanishes off. Okay, so we use our T-square to make horizontal and vertical lines. Those are 2 of the 3 lines we are allowed to make during a 1-point perspective drawing. The only other line that we make is a vanishing point line. So the only time you make a diagonal line is to go to the vanishing point. You cannot have a line like this. You cannot have a line like this. You cannot have a line like this or like this. The only kind of line you can have is going to the vanishing point, a line that's perfectly horizontal, or a line that is perfectly vertical. This is excellent for making buildings. We're going to make a city block. Now, when we make our city block, we're going to be making a few buildings, and then later on we're going to really start using our imagination and creating a city from our imagination. But for now, we just need to learn the very basics. And the very first very basic is to build our very first building. So I'm going to use my T-square. As you can see, it's lined up. See how it's caught my paper there? See how it's taking my paper with it? So I know that my paper is nice and flat, which is going to make a nice horizontal line. I'm even going to cheat just a little bit. I'm just going to make my building the width of my T-square here. And then we're just going to make just the buildings just like we did in first grade, just a rectangle. There is my very first building. All right, everybody go ahead and make your very first building. Just a rectangle touching the bottom of your paper, only about 1 finger or so away from the edge of your paper. Go ahead and do that now. Okay, now remember I said that you can have a vertical line, you can have a horizontal line, and then you can have what's called a vanishing point line. So now I'm going to make the road. So I draw from my vanishing point all the way down to the bottom of my paper. And I've started making a 1-point perspective. This is my road. Then I'm going to make the top of my building. Now, I don't need the top of my building. I don't need my building to be the entire city block. So I'm just going to go a little bit. Then you go over to this corner and you draw a line. And you sort of eyeball where that's going to end. And you're going to be wrong. So be sure you have your eraser ready. Now we're starting to make a building here, but it looks like it's not quite complete. So the next thing we do is we find out how wide our building is going to be on the storefront, or lawn, depending on how you look at things. So I need a vertical line, and I take it from this corner, and I make a nice vertical line there. Then I make a horizontal line, and again from this corner, I'm going to make a horizontal line until I'm cut off right there. Now see, I went too far, so that's what my eraser is for. This is why we do this in pencil. And now I have one building that is below the horizon.
All right, so go ahead and do that now. Make your paper look like mine.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that on the other side. I'm going to build a building about a finger's width away from the edge of the paper. It could be shorter if you want. It could be a little taller if you want. Make sure it does not go above that horizon line. Now we're going to draw the other side of the street. Starting at the vanishing point, lining up with the corner. Starting with the vanishing point, lining up with the corner, we're going to start to build the storefront side. Now we're going to build the roof by, again, starting at the corner, lining up with the vanishing point, just like that. And then again, we make vertical and horizontal lines. Vertical, horizontal, and erase that. Let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so we've built two buildings now. We're going to build another building. We're going to start with a vertical line, and then we're going to determine how wide our storefront is going to be. So we eyeball it. Another vertical line. All right, so see what I've done here is I've built it with the storefront first. So now it just looks like a flat wall, maybe like a billboard or something. It doesn't have any depth to it yet. Let's give it some depth by drawing out some horizontal lines from these corners. Now I've made a mistake here on purpose, and you're going to see it in a second. Now, right now it looks like this roof is going to fall off, so let's give it a back wall here. We have to give it a back ceiling here, right? Now what we're not going to do is we're not going to draw from here to here, because that's not a line we're allowed to have. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw from the vanishing point to this corner, and it's going to cut it off a lot, and it's going to feel wrong, but it will look right in the end. And we erase all this that we don't need. There it is. Now we have a little alley that people can duck into.
So we'll pause here and go ahead and build that third building to get a good idea of how to build these buildings below the horizon line.
Alright, so giving myself a little bit of space, I'm going to draw a nice tall building that goes above the horizon line. And then it's going to be pretty wide actually, above the horizon line there. Now my building is not transparent, so I erase the horizon line in between. And from the line that's closest to me, I line it up with the vanishing point. There we go. All right, so now I've got my bulletin board, my billboard, my very tall building that's not attached to anything, my very tall wall that's not attached to anything. As you'll see, I'm angling up now above my horizon line. All right, let's give this building some depth now. We gave it some width, let's give it some depth. Not forgetting the bottom, which is so easy to do, really. Not forgetting the back wall here. Looks like that back wall is going to fall actually behind that first building. Want to erase my horizon line. I remember over here we had to draw the back corner here, didn't we? But if we look over here on a building that goes above the horizon line, if we did that, we would be drawing a line we would have to erase anyway, because the top of the building actually blocks it. If you imagine standing on a hill looking down on a strip mall or city block, or even a bunch of houses. On some of the shorter buildings, you're going to see the top of the roof, but then there's going to be some tall buildings that you won't see the top of the roof, and that's what this shows us. All right, I'm going to fast forward. I'm going to show you building more buildings. I'm going to really fill this city up with lots of buildings, because right now we have 4 buildings. This is not a city right now. This is a very small town. Let me show you building some more buildings. Right, so I'm going to slow the video back down again to show you how to draw buildings behind buildings, because cities have many blocks in it, lots and lots of blocks. So what I'm going to do is, instead of starting all the way at the ground or the street, I'm just going to start at the top of the building. Most of these buildings, because you can see them, they must therefore be bigger than the buildings in front of us. Most of these buildings are going to go above the horizon line, which makes it easier to draw. Start with my rectangle, raise my horizon line there, alright, so see how I did that? I'm doing it again over here. Starting with a rectangle. We're going to add some embellishments, and the first embellishment we're going to do is a sidewalk. And all we're going to do is we're just going to, and we want this sidewalk to be the same on both sides. So I'm just going to make mine 1 millimeter, or I guess that's, I'm sorry, ½ an inch, and so ½ an inch on this side, and ½ an inch on that side. Mark it, just to sort of indicate to myself. Now, the trickiest part about the sidewalk, and this is a trick that a lot of people have trouble with, is that those sidewalk lines, the seams in a sidewalk, are going to be horizontal. They're going to be much further apart the closer to us they get, and then closer together when they get to the vanishing point.
Alright, now to do doors, what you need to do is you need to determine the height of the door on the first building. Line up your ruler with the vanishing point, like I have here, and that's the height of the door for all of your buildings. And it's going to look super tiny in the background, but as you can see, the height of the door is the same. And then you add your vertical lines, just add your vertical lines there like that on each one of your doors. Because the height of a door is pretty standard, and so when it's far, far away, it's going to look itty bitty, and when it's up close, it's going to look fairly normal. Alright, I'm going to show you again on this side, so I'm going to decide the height of the door is about there, and lining up with the vanishing point, I add the tops of the doors to all the buildings first, and then add the vertical lines in afterwards. Here's to add like a garage or an open door. You just add a horizontal line going into the building and shade a little bit. And then to show you how to make signs, you have to make the sign first and then add the words afterwards. That way your words will look like they are also in perspective here. So here's the sign, and I'm just going to put something generic. You can put something more specific, but I'm just going to put food. And the smaller the sign, the more letters you can get in there. If you have a big, tall sign, you can only get a few letters. But if you have a really narrow sign, you can get more letters in. It's just weird like that. All right, and then the last thing I'm going to show you how to do is windows. And I'm just going to do a few office windows at the top, and then some more bigger picture windows in the middle of this building. But then you can use the same principle on all the buildings. So again, perspective line on the front of the building, and then on the side of the building, a horizontal line. And there's your office windows, like for skyscraper, for like a glass skyscraper. You could go all the way down to the bottom if you wanted to here. I'm just going to show you glass windows at the top and then more like picture windows underneath. So that's how it's done for windows, not for bricks. That's not bricks. Bricks are something else. And then here, when you have the horizontals, you just leave a little space between, and then it looks like separate large windows there. So that is how to build a city in one-point perspective, and then how to add the embellishments. And then you would just continue to fill this out and embellish it until it was full and vibrant and looking really fantastic.